Now here is the title of my presentation. I'm going to organize my talk using three main categories: the head, the heart, and the hands of doing research in second language education. Yeah. Okay, let's work with me on this, Claudine. Just have your microphone on. You've been a teacher for many years, yeah? Is teaching easy for you? Yes?
No.
No. I was hoping that you would say teaching is easy. Okay.
It's difficult, Doc, but for fulfilling.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Okay, later I'm going to ask you whether teaching is easier compared to doing research, and probably you will probably say yes. I enjoy teaching my students. The answer is probably yes.
Yes.
And my students enjoy my teaching. That's a
I
bit
hope
hard to say. You hope that your students will also enjoy your
Yes.
teaching. Research is hard and no fun. It's a bit tricky here. Claudine, yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, generally speaking, research is
Hard.
more challenging compared to teaching.
Yes.
Teaching is something that we are familiar with, especially if you're a teacher. And teaching also is something that you are familiar with when you are a student as well. So it is understandable that for many people in the audience, teaching may be perceived as something that is quite familiar, that is quite maybe easier to do compared to doing research. And teaching is a lot more fun because you get to speak, to interact with your students. But the research is something that is a little bit lonely. You have to lock yourself in a room for hours and hours reading and researching your topic and doing analysis and all that. Yeah. So learning how to teach is easier than learning how to do research. That's usually the general perception of people. But that in fact is not true. Given the same amount of time, I think you'll be able to become a good teacher, and you will also be able to become a good researcher. In my university, there are people who do a lot of teaching because that's their main job. And there are a lot of people whose main job is research. So for these people, for those doing teaching, teaching is not something that is difficult to do. And for those who are doing a lot of research, it is not something that is super challenging to do. It's part of their job. It's the kind of things that they do on a regular basis. Another trick question here for Javen. Teaching is so different from research. What do you think? Yes, no, maybe?
Well,
Different, similar?
it depends on what aspect of doing the task are we looking
Javen
at.
is a very smart individual, smart person here. The answer is it depends.
It depends.
Let me share with you my thought about some of the similarities and differences between teaching and research. Yeah. Okay. Here you go. When you teach, you usually go through these three steps. Yeah. You do your planning, and then you carry out your teaching, and then you do some kind of assessment, evaluating your own teaching, reflecting on your teaching. So quite straightforward, yeah? Surprisingly, research also involves three major steps: planning, executing, and evaluating. So far, so good, yeah? Are they the same or different? Please say the same.
Same.
Yes, quite the same, yeah? Okay. Okay, when you teach, this is what you normally do, yeah? You can't just walk into the classroom and start teaching. You need to consult, you need to look at the syllabus, you need to look at the curriculum, right? And then from there, you sort of design your lesson plan very carefully, the main teaching points, the kind of activities that you want to do to engage your students in the classroom. And then you walk into the classroom and you start teaching. And when you teach, when you deliver your lesson, consciously or unconsciously, you are also making a lot of observations. You are actually collecting data from your students and also from what you do in the classroom. So you are making a lot of data collection there. And at the end of the lesson, maybe a day later, you sort of sit down and sort of reflect back on what you have done. And then you try to make sense of what you saw happening in your classroom. And then you start planning again for the future lesson, taking into account things that, work very well in your lesson and also things that did not work very well. And then in the next lesson, you may want to make changes in order to improve on your next lesson. What about research? Is it the same thing like this? Pretty much. Look at this. Well, you don't have a syllabus, but you have a body of literature that you need to consult. This is one very, very important point for graduate students in particular. When they do a piece of academic research, they need to consult the literature. You cannot just do a piece of research based on your ideas, based on your imagination, based on your own understanding of one topic or one issue in language education. You have to consult the literature. And this is something that I'm going to elaborate a little bit more later. In other words, your research, your graduate level research will have to be literature supported. If it is not, then it may not be a piece of research that has high academic value. It's still useful, but it may not have that value from an academic perspective. And after you've done your research, you may or may not be able to get your research published in a good journal. So the key thing again is it has to be literature supported. In the same way that before you go to the classroom, you need to consult the syllabus. When you do a piece of research, you need to consult the literature. And then you do, sit down and design your research basically. And that's what your lesson plan about when you do your teaching. So when you do research, you need to also sit down and plan very carefully what sort of things you want to do, what is the goal of your research, what is the objective, and how do you plan to collect data and things like that. And the next step is you actually do the activity, do the actual study, do the actual collection of the data, analysis of the data, and eventually you sort of sit down, evaluate, and write up the result of the study. Claudine, same or different? Same. Please say the same but different.
Same but different.
Yes, same but different. Yeah, but the steps are pretty much the same. So you have to simply follow the steps because the steps are pretty standard. You have to go through the literature review and the process of designing your study and then collecting the data and then evaluating the data. Now, incidentally, if you look at the left-hand side, I know many of you are teachers, many of you are teachers with maybe not a lot of experience in doing academic. What you can do is to look at your own teaching, to look at how you develop your lesson or to observe other people doing the teaching. And then what you do is then you sort of collect data, you sort of interview the teacher who is doing the lesson, and maybe you may want to find out if what the teacher does in the classroom reflect, truthfully what the syllabus is all about. And that can be a piece of very nice research that you can later get published in a journal, in a practice-oriented kind of a teaching journal. Okay, so today's lesson is about, today's discussion is about this, the 3 H's of researching language education in a blended learning environment like, most of us are finding ourselves in. So essentially 3 things that we need to focus, to be aware of. The head has to do with knowledge, your belief, your knowledge about what research is all about. The heart is about your feeling, your enthusiasm, your motivation, and things like that. Very important. And number 3 is the actual skills that you need to have in order to do a piece of research, whether classroom-oriented research or the more theoretical type of research. Let me begin with the head. Now, the head is very important because the head helps you understand what research is all about. We are going to define research together here. Very simple way of defining research. Now, here are a few points that people agree sort of characterize what a piece of research is all about. Number 1 is a systematic process of finding answers to questions. Yeah. Number 2, finding solutions to problems. Number 3, sometimes it's a process of generating new knowledge, not always. For most graduate students, I don't think it's about generating a brand new piece of knowledge, but it's more about the last one, I think. It's about confirming or disconfirming what other researchers have found in the past. Yeah. If you have become a very seasoned, experienced researchers, then you are expected, if that is your main job, a researcher, then you will need to develop and to generate new, piece of knowledge in your research. So A, 1, 2, 3, and 4, or all of the above. So usually research is described in this way. It's a process of finding answers, but the key word is it's a systematic process. Yeah, finding answers, finding solutions to problems, generating new knowledge, disconfirming or confirming what we know, and maybe it's all of the above that we can use as a basic definition of research. Another important thing is this: the question of why you do or I do need to do research. Is it, for me, it's for my professional growth basically, but for you it can be a, what is it for you, Claudine? A requirement before you can graduate? Yeah.
Yes, at this point, yes.
At this point, yes, but maybe at a later stage, this is something that will help you to grow professionally.
I agree.
And to develop your career, maybe in, in teaching or in academia. Yeah. So what does it mean to me in my job, in my career? In my university, for example, every single faculty member is expected. I think the same thing happens in the Philippines. Every single faculty member is expected to be engaged, to be involved in research, in publication, and so on and so forth. The next question is very important too. Do I have the knowledge to do it? Yeah. If I don't, do you know where to find information that will help you build that knowledge that will allow you to do a good piece of research? Another important thing is this: do I have access to resources? Again, resources here in particular refer to literature. Do you have access to recent publications, to journal articles, journals that usually publish mainstream articles in our field? And another important question is this: can I get support from my institutions? Claudine, in your case, this is support from your supervisors mostly, and may also support from other people in the university, or maybe your friends, your peers as well. And for those of you who are actually not as students but are full-time teachers, another important question to ask is this: will I get time off or reduce teaching hours? Now, this is something that a lot of teachers have been sort of concerned with. Most of them say that they're interested in doing research, but time is a major issue, because if they do engage in research, they don't usually get time off, or they don't get reduced teaching hours as well from the institution. So that makes it difficult for teachers to do a piece of research like that. So that's the head: an understanding of what research is all about, an understanding of why research is important in your job, in your career, maybe as a student or as a teacher. The next one, whether or not you have access to resources. The next one, the heart. I think this is probably the most important of the three. Between the head, the heart, and the hands, I think I would say that the heart is probably the most important. The heart is what makes the world go round. Whatever you are doing, when your heart is not there, then you will feel that research does not have a lot of meaning to you. You will feel that research is just something that you have to do, but you don't really want to do it. So ask yourself this question. Again, let me ask Claudine. Claudine, are you excited about understanding and solving language problems? Please say yes.
Yes, always.
Good that you're excited. Number two, are you eager and curious to know about the link between teaching and research? Yes. So these days, people are talking about the link between teaching and research, and teachers are expected to do the kind of teaching that is so-called evidence-based. Evidence-based means your teaching is well-informed by research that has been done by other experts in the field. Are you eager and curious? The answer is yes. The last one, Claudine. Does your heart beat faster at the prospect of discovering new knowledge? Now, new knowledge here can be something that you are not aware before, yeah? And now you know, wow, you feel very elated. You feel very excited. You feel more than just excited. It's thrilling, actually, yes?
Definitely thrilling.
Yes, very good. If the answer to all these three questions is yes, then you are ready to do research for many, many years to come. Simply because research takes time, research takes years, and research takes a lot of commitment, takes a lot of dedication. If your heart is not there, it is really, really very difficult for you to stay still for many, many hours reading and researching something that may or may not be immediately useful to you. More questions. Again, this is to do with the heart, yeah? Do I have the willpower, the motivation? Very important. Right now, of course, you do have the motivation, because if you don't have the motivation, you will not do your research. And if you don't do your research, you won't be able to graduate, yeah? Very straightforward. Number two, more importantly is this, do I have the way power? If you run into difficulties in your research, do you know where to find help, where to find support? The way power is as important as the willpower. Having the willpower alone is not sufficient. You just need to know where to find resources, where to tap upon resources that are available in your university, within the Philippines, or even beyond the Philippines. Yeah. Confidence is another important thing. Do you have the confidence? Do you have the knowledge to do it? Resilient. Yeah. Research can be difficult for those of you who are new in the field. So it's the ability to keep trying, to persist in the face of difficulties is another important element to do with the heart. The next one is the hands. Yeah, so we have looked at very briefly with the head, and then the heart, which I said was very important, and finally the hands. The hands are the actual things, the actual skills that you need to do, that you need to have in order to be able to carry out, to plan and carry out a piece of research. Typically, this is what you have learned from your research methodology class. Yeah, so the first thing you need to do is to find a topic, and then you generate a research question, and then you consult the literature, you design your study, you develop your instruments, and then you do the analysis, and then finally you write up the result of your research. I'm not going to go through all this, but I'm going to sort of simplify and focus on the kind of things that most graduate students usually run into difficulties. So I'm going to instead share with you 5 ideas about how you can initially find a viable research topic right in the middle there, and then how you can then provide support, provide justification by doing a lot of reading, by doing a lot of relevant reading related to your topic. And then the next thing is the kind of thinking that you need to be involved, the kind of thinking that you need to do in order to refine, in order for you to, to package your topic in a way that is acceptable. And then how you can then find support from other people by sharing your ideas, by talking, by listening to other people in the field, and finally writing up your research. Yeah, so 5 things that I'm going to share with you. All this to do with the actual nitty-gritty of doing a piece of research. Let me begin with the topic. Again, I mentioned earlier on that, even at the initial stage of finding a topic, I think you need to think through this very carefully. You need to make sure that your topic is something that you have a lot of passion with. Again, this has to do with the heart as well. Remember, research takes quite a bit of time. If you don't have passion, if you are not really interested in the topic that you're investigating, then chances are you will not be doing your research very carefully or very seriously. Yeah. So passion is very, very important. For example, These days, a lot of people, a lot of researchers are looking at the topic of engaged learning. What is engagement? Why are my students not engaged in my lesson, in my classroom? How can I find out more about engagement so that eventually I am able to fully engage my students in the classroom, not only behaviorally, but also cognitively, emotionally, and also socially. So this is a great topic, actually, something that to me that I have a lot of passion about. So this is the kind of topic that I would enjoy doing a piece of research on. Yeah, again, the message for you is this: find a topic that you are really, really passionate about. Another topic that I am really passionate about is reading, in particular pleasure reading, in particular extensive reading. And I've been thinking about the topic, I've been doing research about this for more than 30 years now. And I'm still very passionate about this. And my heart usually beats very fast when I, do a piece of research on extensive reading. So passion is the key. Number two, when you think of a topic, I think you need to think a little bit long term. Try to stay away from doing a piece of research that is seasonal. For example, at the moment, a lot of people are doing research on the pandemic, the effect of pandemic for teaching grammar, the effect of pandemic for teaching vocabulary, for example. I tend to stay away from that kind of topic because the pandemic is going to go away in 2 years' time. And after that, people will not even remember that the pandemic happened like 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. So instead, I would think about a topic that will keep me going for 5 years, for 10 years, for 20 years. I think that is very important. Claudine, if you are thinking of becoming a engaged researcher or teacher researcher, then you need to find a topic that will keep you going for the next 10 years or for the next 20 years. Are there research topics that will, be able to get you through 10 years, 20 years? The answer is yes. There are many topics out there. I can give you an example. For example, it's a guy by the name of Paul Nation. He used to teach in New Zealand. I think he's retired now. He built his career on vocabulary. So he did a lot of research for the past 20, 30, 40 years, researching vocabulary. And he is still doing it even after his retirement. Yeah. Now, interestingly, the topic of vocabulary is relevant for language education, whether we are, we find ourselves during this difficult time of the pandemic, or even in the future. Another important question is this: whether the topic that you are thinking about, that you have selected, is current or dated. This is another major decision that you have to really be able to decide. Is my topic current? Are other researchers currently doing the same kind of research that I'm doing? That is important. Or my research is probably still interesting to me, but it's not of interest to other researchers in the field. There are many examples of dated topics. When I say dated, it doesn't mean that the topic is not relevant for you as a teacher. It may still be relevant, but as a research topic, it's no longer of interest to many researchers or to most researchers. A great example is error analysis in language teaching. The kind of mistakes that students make when they write a piece of essay, for example, categorizing mistakes or errors in terms of different classifications. That type of research is no longer current. Nobody is doing it. So if you do a piece of research in that area, chances are you may not be able to graduate, maybe. At least if you're my students, you won't be able to graduate with that topic. And if you have completed that study, you may not be able to publish your paper in a journal. So the big question is, how do we know? Yeah, because most students have little experience in doing research. Most students have little knowledge about what is current and what is not current. So how can we find out whether a topic is current or not current? My suggestion is for you to look at journals, mainstream journals in our field. What I have here is an example of a mainstream journal. It's called the ELT Journal, published in the UK by Oxford University Press. So what you need to do is just to look at the table of contents. Yeah. Where do you find the table of contents, Claudine? That's a practical question, isn't it? Where do you find the table of contents? I don't subscribe to the ELT Journal, for example. So how do you get access to the table of contents, Claudine? That's not a trick question. That's a genuine question. Claudine? Yes.
The table of contents.
Yes.
If I have the physical book, I mean the physical copy.
If you have the physical copies, but chances are you don't have a physical copy. You may have one published many, many years ago. How do you get the most recent table of contents of journals like the ELT Journal, for example? Very easy. You just go to the website because the table of contents are freely available these days.
Right.
Yeah. So there is no reason for you, for everyone here to say that, well, I don't know what is recent and what is current and what is dated. You can't do that because information like this is available. In fact, if you go to a website, you can click on subscribe to the table of contents only. So every 3 months or every 4 months, you know, when the issue is published, you will receive notification, you know, that the issue is now published and you'll be able to see the table of contents. Yeah. So very, very straightforward. Other online journals also have, you know, this kind of service where people can just look at the table of contents. Now, here are some of the most recently published topics in English language teaching. The first one, surprise, surprise, is on speaking test in relation to talk, in relation to group work. Second example is pronunciation in course books. Another classic topic, basically, pronunciation in course book. But the theoretical lens is very interesting here. The theoretical lens is English as a world language, English as a lingua franca. Yeah. Now here's another one, technology. Very interesting here, especially in a blended learning environment. Teacher, student created videos in English language teaching. So that is one way for us to engage students during the blended learning environment. And if you do that, you can also collect data from the students and then write about this particular topic. The use of technology, the use of videos in the classroom, for example, is now a very, very common and very popular topic in language education, and interestingly in many other areas of education as well. Another example on blended learning type of research is the kind of feedback that you give to your students. In the past, you would scribble, yeah? You would write on the side of the student's essay and then, you know, doing all the correction on paper. But today, you can do you can provide audio notes to your students, and you can also provide video feedback to your students. If that is what you do, you can turn this into a very nice research project for your, either for your own interest or for meeting your graduate requirements. Another journal that I wanted to share with you is this language teaching research. This is also another high profile journal. Again, just a quick look at the table of contents will give you an idea of the kind of topic that are still current. Now, let me just elaborate on that a little bit. You will see that topic like recast, feedback, vocabulary. These are topics that I would consider classic topics in language education. The kind of topics that will continue to be relevant for many, many, many years to come. Yeah. So the topic itself may be old, if you like, but I would use the word classic. What is important is for you to frame your research in such a way so that a familiar topic is investigated new theoretical lens. I think that is the challenge for you. You can, for example, look at grammar, which is a classic topic. I mean, grammar is going to be relevant for many, many, many years to come. But you need to look at grammar from a different theoretical perspective. Maybe, let me just share with you very quickly, maybe from, two different major perspectives, teaching grammar as knowledge and teaching grammar as meaning-making resources, for example. Yeah, and you'll be able to find a lot of research looking at the teaching of grammar in the context of writing, but the researchers will look at grammar instead of just a set of rules that the students have to learn and memorize. Yeah, here are some other examples from the same journal. Okay. Some of you may be thinking, well, that is a bit difficult. There are so many journals out there, and I don't really have a lot of time to actually do an extensive research on what has been published in the past 5 years or so. Okay. Fortunately, I came across 2 books, fairly new. The one on the left-hand side was published last year, and the one on the right-hand side is not published yet, but it's going to be published this year. Now, what is beautiful about these 2 books is that these books contain a lot of chapters, and each chapter was written by experts in the field, and each chapter is about topics in language education, along with the kind of research questions that you can actually, use and adapt for your own research. So if you are looking for a relevant current research topic in language education, I would strongly suggest that you look at or you consult these 2 books. The first one is Qualitative Research Topic in Language Education, for those of you who are doing qualitative research. And the right-hand side is more general. Yeah, and both deal with research topics and also research questions. Extremely useful books. How do you get access to these 2 books, Claudine?
Please tell us.
Use your credit cards to buy these 2 books from Amazon.com. Or if you know a little trick, I think you can go to Google and, you never know, you can get lucky. And these books may be available, out there. Okay, so that is the first one, yeah? The topic, very important. It has to be relevant. It has to be something that you're passionate about. It has to be current. And I hope you now know a little bit about how to find relevant and current information about the kind of topic that is viable, the kind of topic that is researchable in language education. The next one is read, number 2. What do you read? I think you need to read on the theory related to the topic that you're investigating. For example, if you're interested in teacher well-being, for example, or student well-being, one theoretical consideration that you might want to look at is the growth mindset. It's a very, very popular topic these days. It was first developed by a professor from the US. The name of the professor is Carol Dweck, and she started researching this topic for many, many years, and she came up with this theory that there are 2 types of people with a fixed mindset and people with a growth mindset. Well, of course, many of us are somewhere in between. Yeah, we have a mixture of fixed mindset and growth mindset. And what she's been saying for many years is that people with growth mindset are those who are likely to be more successful, to be more adaptable, to be more successful in whatever they're doing, whether it's in academia, whether it's in career, and things like that. So the first thing for you to do will be to find out relevant theory that you can then use as a basis to support your earlier on, your research will have to be literature supported. Yeah, by literature supported, it's very clear that you need a theory. You need a theoretical framework. Yeah, in order to contextualize your research. And then the next bit is for you to actually look at empirical research studies related to the topic that you are investigating. I have given an example here. In fact, this is recently a newly published paper that has looked at the English language pre-service teachers mindset. Again, using Carol Dweck's theory of growth mindset. It's a very interesting study. If you send me an email, I'll be able to send a copy of that article to you. Yeah. So two things that you need to do: find a theory, but that theory alone is not enough. You need to find empirical studies as part of your literature, and then you use this to contextualize, to provide support for the research that you are doing. Where do you find this theory and research? Again, you need to go to recent publications, you need to go to journals, and you need to go to have access to books as well. Let me give you some examples. Yeah. Now, these are some examples of new books that I've seen recently. The first one is Designing Learning from Embodied Teaching. The first one is about multimodality. The first one is about new literacies and so on and so forth. It was written by one of my colleagues at NTU, at NIE here. It's a very nicely written book. Again, if you need a copy of this book, let me know. I will tell you where to buy the book from Amazon.com. The second one is another new book, just came out, Engaging Language Learners in Contemporary Classroom, published by Cambridge University Press. You need access to these new books. Otherwise, your topic will not be relevant, will not be current, and your theoretical framework will be sort of dated. The next one is a journal. Yeah. Again, if you do not have access to a lot of journals, I would highly recommend that you have access to this particular journal. It's called Language Teaching. Again, published by Cambridge University Press. Now, this journal is very special because this journal publishes only literature review papers. Let me say this again. This journal publishes only literature review papers or articles. Now, these review articles are written by top people in the field. So immediately, I hope you can see, immediately that if you have access to information from this journal, you'll be able to find a review related to the topic that you're investigating, and you'll be able to find a lot of useful information related to the topic that you are working on. Extremely useful journal, Language Teaching Surveys and Studies by Cambridge University Press. I think it's published only once a year, or maybe 2 times a year. Extremely useful. If you do not have access to mainstream journals or publications in books, because they're very expensive. Now, this guy has been very, very good. He put together a list of open access journals. These are good open access journals in our field. For example, Asia TEFL Journal. I think that is open access. Yeah, PASA, a journal published in Thailand, also open access. And then there's one published by Santo Thomas University. That one is also open access. So this guy put together a list of open access journals in our field. Again, the message from me to you is this. These days, you can't say that, well, you know, I come from a remote, small province in the Philippines. I don't have access to all this wonderful literature. That's not true anymore. Because this guy has put together a list of free access journals that we can access, you know, from anywhere in the world. So that's the QR code. Feel free to scan the code, yeah? Next. And there are other places for you to, get your hands on, get hold of resources, online resources like academia.edu, ResearchGate. Now those are repositories that usually provide a lot of free information about published journals and sometimes published books as well. Do not discount websites of ELT or well-known ELT scholars. Now, these people usually have websites, and in their websites, they put together a lot of useful resources, including their previously published journal articles or even book chapters. Javen, I mentioned earlier about pollination, yeah? He has his own website, and his website contains a lot of resources that you can use, to investigate, to do research on vocabulary. You can also go to my website. I have a website, and it has a lot of resources free. All the resources in my website are free. I'll share with you the address later. Very important when you start researching your topic, one thing you need to do is to identify big names, identify big players in the area, topics that you're investing. One place for you to go to will be to go to Google Scholar. Can I ask everyone to go to Google Scholar now? If you have access to the internet, please go to Google Scholar and type in the keywords here is extensive listening. Yeah, just an example that some of you are interested in researching this topic, extensive listening. When you click on it, what do you see?
Your name, Doc.
Where is my name?
Below the title.
Below the title at the top. What does it mean actually? That means that the person at the very top is the guy whose work is the most cited. And the number of citations can often be used as a basis for you to identify the main researchers, the main scholars in that particular area that you're investigating. Yeah. So you can do the same with your topics. Maybe you're researching grammar in writing, for example. You can do the same. If you type in the correct keyword, you'll be able to get a lot of information about who are the top guys. Yeah, let me say this very carefully to you. When you do a piece of research in one topic area, you will need to cite big names in your research. You may or may not agree with the big players, but you cannot ignore them. You have to include them. And this is part of what I mentioned earlier on about literature supported. So later, your readers, your reviewers will find out whether or not you have done a good job in finding relevant research and relevant books and references written by important people in the field. Next, the next one is pretty straightforward, yeah? Once you've got the topic and once you've done enough reading, it's time for you to sit down and start thinking about your topic, yeah? Are you able to explain, your topic in a way that makes sense to you? Are you able to explain it to other people, yeah? Have you had a chance to explore the topic further in terms of its potential problems, in terms of its potential application in your teaching context? Have you done sufficient research that will help you to evaluate the trustworthiness, the worth of the research that you're planning to do? And there's a lot more things that you need to do. Connecting, comparing, contrasting, consolidating, synthesizing. But eventually you want to be able to say that, well, up to now, from the reading that I've done, I think we have learned that up to date, the status of the topic is such and such. This is what we have learned so far. And where do I come in as a researcher that is now investigating this particular topic? Here, it's your job again to identify what is still missing. what is still not done by other researchers? Where do I come in? What is my contribution in this whole scheme of researching that particular topic? In other words, how do I address this gap in my research? Again, gap is what contribution is all about. As a researcher, you want to be able to say that, well, my research is done in such a way that I'm able to address an important gap in the literature, that I'm able to contribute something in the ongoing discussion about the topic that me and other people are looking at this point in time. Now, here are two examples of two publications. Both are excellent publications because the researchers are able to find a gap and fill the gap using, by doing a piece of research that has not been done by other researchers. Javen, are you still there?
Yes, Doc.
Okay, good. Yes, please have your video on. Looks like I'm looking at a blank screen. So that,
No, sir, Doc,
yeah.
because you cannot view everyone, so it depends.
Yes, at least I can see at least one person on my screen. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Now, this is the big thing. I said earlier on about addressing a gap, filling a gap. Now, the researcher on the left-hand side was able to address an important gap back then because the paper was published in the year 2000. And up to that point in time, nobody had looked at listening problems from a cognitive perspective. So once this paper was published, it became a seminal paper. And that is a huge contribution, as far as a researcher is concerned. If you look at the number there, up to date, it has been cited by more than 1,000, people. Now, here's another one I mentioned earlier on about extensive listening, yeah? Again, extensive listening was something that a lot of people had not paid attention at that point in time, about 10 years ago. So I came in, I wrote a paper on extensive listening, and it became a first of its kind. It became a seminal paper. It became something that has not been written by other people. And because of that, the citation has been growing steadily since it was published about 10 years ago. Now it's about 350 citation, and it's likely to be growing, as the years go by. So number one is topic, number two is reading, number three is thinking, and number four is talking and listening. Talking and listening help you clarify your own thoughts about the topic that you are investigating. One way to do this would be for you to form a research group, working together with other students in the same university or students with from other universities. You can also join special interest groups like ITEFL special interest group, Philippine TESOL or Thai TESOL or TESOL International, so that you get to exchange ideas, you get to interact with other people who are researching the same area as you. You can also share your ideas in a staff seminar or with your colleagues. The idea here is not just for you to tell people what your research is all about, but it's for you to receive feedback from other people. What makes sense to you may not make a lot of sense to other people. And this is an opportunity for you to listen and to further process, your topic to, make it even better and more focused. You can also share your ideas in social media. You'll be surprised that, the social media is a wonderful place for you to, to crowdsource information. If you're thinking of a topic, you just throw your topic in social media and ask people, hey, have you heard people researching this topic, for example? And you'll be surprised that you will be able to hear a lot of, information from other people. So crowdsourcing can be an extremely useful way of further finding out about your topic, whether other people have done the same thing or not. Conferences, if you can, joining a roundtable discussion or giving a presentation in a conference or in a webinar. Again, the idea is for you to receive feedback from other researchers. Finally, writing. Now, this is tough. Writing takes a lot of time, but writing is extremely important. It helps you clarify your own thoughts. It helps you clarify your own topic. So start writing as early as possible, even before your research has been completed. In order for you to develop your writing skills, you need to do it regularly, write daily. You can write blogs, write teaching journals, or write anything that comes to mind. And that is the only way you can develop, and you can, develop your writing skills. Write a small piece and get it published in a newsletter, in a magazine, in a teacher journals, and things like that. And that would be a very good exercise for you, even before you graduate from the universities. Just something for us to be aware of. Writing is hard at first. Yes, it's hard. Nobody is a born writer, but everyone is a born speaker. Talking is easy. Listening is not always easy, but it's easier compared to writing. Yeah, but nobody is a born writer. It is something that you have to learn. Writing is a learned skill, and it takes quite a bit of time for you to develop your writing skill. Do it for 5 years, and you will find that writing is an enjoyable activity. Now, I've been doing some writing for many, many years, and now writing to me is sort of second nature. And every morning I would write something maybe on Facebook, 1 or 2 paragraphs. And it gets easier, after a while. Now, here are some examples of magazines, if you like, or journals, teacher journals, if you like. The first one is called Modern English Teacher, published in the UK. Now, you'll be surprised that this publication of this journal, Modern English Teacher, publishes very short papers, like 1,000 words, 1,500. 2,000 words. Yeah. So the kind of activities that you find useful in the classroom, you can write it in such a way that it is appealing for the international, ELT or TESOL readers. And what is interesting is that if you're successful in publishing in this journal, you get paid actually. It's like $200. Not too bad. 200 pounds, I think. Oh. So not too bad. Yeah. The middle one, Humanizing Language Teaching, is an open access journal. Also not very difficult to get in. Just write something related to English language teaching. And if you write well, if what you're writing makes a lot of sense, then it will eventually get published. The last one is English Teaching Professional, another very interesting, very popular language magazine for teachers. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope I've shared something useful with you today.
Absolutely, Doc.
Yeah, which I've organized around 3 major themes. The most important part, as I said earlier, is the heart. Make sure that you find a topic that you are really, really passionate about. Research takes hours and hours of reading, thinking, talking, writing, and things like that. If the topic that you're investigating is not something that you really enjoy doing, I think you will suffer a great deal. So find something that is really, really of interest to you. And you also need to know a little bit about what research involves, a little bit about the theory of research, a little bit about an understanding of what research means to you in your job or in your career as a student or later in the future. And finally, you also need to know some practical skills of how to formulate, how to decide on a researchable topic, and how to find relevant reading materials, free access to the literature from the internet and from other sources, and how you can then formulate your research in such a way that makes sense to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the heart, the head, and the hands of doing research. Now, here is a special gift for you. These 4 books are free for you. You just need
Thank
to
you
go.
so much, Doc.
Yes, you just need to go to this website. That's my website, willyrenandia.com. So these days I'm using all sort of media to reach out, to communicate to people from all around the world. My slides are available here. So you can scan it and you can download my slide. It's located in my website, and in that website, you'll be able to find a lot of resources that you may find useful for your research and for your further studies, for your professional development.